What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless Engineer, and I critically analyze apologist claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Today, we're taking a look at a clip from The Line. If you would like to, please go down below to the description and find a link to The Line and to the live stream that this video clip is coming from. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to The Line. I host over on The Line at least twice a month, so I hope to see you over there. All right. Let's get on into the clip. If you're ready to fuck around and find out what this crazy ass caller's talking about today, then please stay tuned.
Steven, pronouns he and him, calling in all the way from the land of tea and monarchy, the UK, who is a theist, who believes in Jesus and his disciples and wants to defend his faith here on Easter. Steven, you are on the line with Forrest and John. How are you doing today?
Sup, Steven?
Goodness me, it's like 2:45 in the morning over here.
I appreciate you staying up late for us.
Well, it is Easter Monday, so I haven't got work tomorrow, so it's fine.
Yeah, how's tomorrow?
Well, technically tomorrow's today, isn't it? So I'm already in Monday.
Yeah, for you.
So,
it's 8:45 over here. I can hear you just fine, man. So what, you say you believe in Jesus is as his disciples say he is. So are you're talking about Jesus and the Bible. Really quickly before we jump in, I just want to ask you the same questions I usually ask Christians. Do you believe that the Bible is wholly and completely accurate, word for word, or do you think that it needs to be interpreted and like some of it's not quite right, some of it's like parable, some of it's poetry, some of it is inaccurate or whatever, but like, or do you believe every single word of the Bible is true?
Look, in an ideal world, obviously, if we would just go off the basis that if the Bible is God's word, then of course I would like to think that God wouldn't want the Bible to be misinterpreted so many times to the point where there's so many different denominations. So clearly, I understand that from a human being's perspective, maybe it was always going to be the case where there was going to be different interpretations, and maybe we can never get away from that. The same way, I suppose, that there's different interpretations when it comes to disagreements, when it comes to scientific topics. You're going to get two sides of the table. I'm just as an example, I think humans will always disagree no matter what you've got in front of you. So in terms of answering your question, do I believe it's God's word? Yes. Do I believe it gets misinterpreted? Yes. What was your other question? Sorry.
To be clear, I was asking more about like internal consistency. So like the Bible, has lots of inconsistencies, lots of, where one part contradicts another part, lots of things that are scientifically impossible or don't make sense according to, match up with reality. So like, that's really what I'm asking about. Like, do you think that the Bible as it is a good enough account?
The Bible was never meant to be a scientific book to begin with. I think, it'd be nice if it was. I mean, imagine if the Bible literally had all the scientific answers right there in front of us for 2,000 years. I mean,
it'd be great. And that's what I'm asking about, because we get Christians who call in all the time who say, no, every single word of the Bible is true, and if the Bible says the sky is red, then the sky is red. And you know what I mean?
I'm sorry, but as much as I love my brothers and sisters in Christ, some of them are idiots. You've got idiot atheists, you've got idiot Christians. I'm sorry, I can have a drink with them, I can have a beer with them. And but I will tell them to shut up as well. So I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, I love them, but and I don't claim to be a great apologist, but I can have a good conversation with somebody, have a laugh, and have a beer afterwards. And what men should do. We disagree, but we can also agree on something. So do you know what? My question was a loaded question when I put that in the old web chat box thing. So I'm happy for you to throw something my way, and if I come away red-faced, brilliant.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand where you're coming from. And then the one last question really quickly that I had is do you believe specifically the character of God and or Jesus in the Bible as he is presented in here? Do you believe that character is an accurate representation of the God that you believe in?
In terms of how Christ is characterized within the Bible, I would like to think that if more people, including Christians, were to try and follow those teachings, I think we can all agree at least, I like to think, even atheists, just literally strictly talking about the teachings of Christ, I think the world could be a better place. But unfortunately, Christians don't always follow Christ's teachings, and I would include myself in that one. And sometimes I'm not perfect. So
sure, and I appreciate that, but the question that I asked you is very specific for a reason. So like there is a God in the Old Testament, and then there's Jesus in the New Testament, and they're the same person in different forms, and blah blah blah. The character that is presented in the Bible of this God that is pretty consistent throughout. I'm asking you, like, the actions, the words, the things this God commands, the things this God does. Do you think that God as presented in the Bible and Jesus as presented in the Bible is an accurate representation of the deity that you worship?
Well, let's get one thing clear. Although I believe in the Holy Trinity, I would consider myself to be a follower of Christ. And I've had conversations in the past where I think sometimes the Old Testament doesn't do us any favors, and I think it works in your favor in terms of bringing up certain passages from the Old Testament. I'm not going to lie; it's a difficult read even for us Christians. So I follow Christ. I think that his teachings are amazing, and I believe they have created and they have provided the foundation for a lot of going that last call. I think a lot of our morality in the West can be traced back to Christ and some of the teachings and the parables, and I believe that's kind of influenced a lot of our human laws. I think, and I think.
Just to be clear, when you talk about you say you're not a Trinitarian, and I appreciate that. I
am a Trinitarian. I do believe in the Trinity. Yes.
Oh. Okay, so
I'm not going to go I'm not going down that rabbit hole tonight. It's too late for that, but we can save that for another conversation. But
I'm super cool with that. But like that's kind of where I'm getting hung up, where I'm not quite understanding, because I agree that the God of the Old Testament certainly isn't doing Christianity any favors. He's an asshole. But Jesus is very clear that that he comes not to change the law, but to fulfill it, that not a jot or a tittle of the law of the Old Testament shall change until heaven and earth have come to pass, that he is the same as his father before him, that he is coming with the same lessons and the same teachings. He actually is the one. It's not until Jesus that we get the concept of hell with eternal punishment for finite crimes. So like, if anything, he's a little bit more extreme than the God of the Old Testament. He just doesn't like set people on fire by himself as the God of the Old Testament does. It sounds to me by my reading that these are one and the same person, or at least Jesus is trying to tell us that he is the same person as this God. So I'm just trying to understand where your hang up is here in saying that, like, you don't think that the God of the Old Testament is an accurate representation of the God that you believe in, but you do believe that the God of the New Testament is an accurate representation, or is that not what you're saying? Maybe I'm misunderstanding you.
No, I think if we try and meet in the middle here, ultimately I would say, there are probably I would like to think, and I'm not an expert on this. I'm not coming in here with PhDs next to my name and stuff. But what I would say is that whenever there's something that's happened in the Old Testament, there has to be some kind of reason for that. We can't just look at it at face value and looking at it at black and white. Clearly, the reason it must have been documented is for there to be some sort of moral lesson to be born out of that. If we look deeply into it, and I'm sure if you started looking at theologians or even atheists who know a lot about the Old Testament,
I've got a question.
I'm sure you can pull something from that. There must be something in some of those stories where we can glean from that and learn something from it.
Oh, I get so I know that you said that you're not a theologian, but do you happen to recall Numbers 31?
No, not off the top of my head, no.
Okay, this is a really good example here, and I would love for you to either tell me or ponder on this. What is the moral conclusion, or what's the lesson to learn from God ordering Moses to go into the Midianite group of people group, have them slaughter every single one of them, including babies, including children, including all of the girls and women that had known a man or had sex, and to keep for themselves as spoils all the virgin girls. What's the moral lesson to be taken from God telling them to basically eradicate an entire people group, kidnap their little girls, and force them into sexual slavery?
So is there? So you're suggesting there's no moralistic justification for that?
I
find it
saying
weird that you would call that
absolute...
a suggestion.
Oh no! Well, we're focusing on morality. I think I think off the back of that last call, we're zeroing in now on morality, and that's fine. We can have a conversation about that. I can meet with that one. I can honestly say that it doesn't sound like a good idea, but I'm sure theologians will try to do mental gymnastics to figure out how that can work in their favor. What have they said? You tell me what
can I tell you? Right, you're mentioning theologians. I can tell you what William Lane Craig said. William Lane Craig said that it was better to kill pagan children than to allow them to live. Do you resonate with that sentiment?
Is that based on the recent thing that kind of went viral in the last 6 to 12 months? Is that something? Is that what you're?
I mean, that's just him reinforcing a belief that he's espoused before in an academic setting. So like he's just saying that his views haven't changed.
Okay. Well, I don't always agree with William Lane Craig as well. I mean, I think sometimes he can bring some strong arguments. He has some. He's obviously clearly a very
that's not answering my question though. That's not answering my question.
Okay, so shall I agree with you and then we can move on to something? So I would say that without looking into it deeply, just looking at it at face value, common sense, logical common sense, I would say that passage clearly is a bit silly. And that's using nice words.
Okay.
That's incredibly charitable.
I agree with you on that one. Yeah, I agree with you on that one.
So God's a silly bitch. Is that what you're saying?
God is a bit silly, and that's why he said to go slaughter a civilization and keep their virgin girls as sex slaves.
So should we look at it then as a completely like a house of cards then? So if we would just take that card away, and I'm willing to concede and agree with you on that one. Does the complete concepts of Christianity and everything else that comes with it that you guys, I'm sure, they debate about all the time, that's it. That house of cards will just come crashing down.
No, so here's the thing: is that like you started out by saying that we that's why I asked you these questions to begin with, because I wanted to understand if you thought that the Bible was an accurate depiction of God, and you're here to defend this God. And here we have an example where this God is a monster. Like there is no I appreciate your kindly British demeanor to say that it's a bit silly, but what it is fucking disgusting. And so like that's the way we would say it here in America.
It's fucking disgusting. I'm quite happy to go with that word. I've got a foul mouth, and it's not. Don't you worry about that. I can. It's fine.
And the key is that it is not even close to the only example. The Bible is a pro-slavery book front to back. God commands slavery and condones slavery over and over. The Bible has all manner of rape and torture and genocide and injustice. God is unjust and unkind and cruel and stupid over and over in the Bible. And that's not my opinion. If you read the book, he does things that are just dumb and are unbelievably just unkind and cruel. And what you said a minute ago before John asked you this question was that even the bad parts can be useful. There's a moral lesson to draw from that. And so the question that we have here, at least that I have, is what is the overall moral lesson that God was trying to teach by commanding genocide and sex slavery? What was the moral thing that we were to draw from that?
No idea.
Right. Is there, can you possibly conceive of one?
No, I can't, no.
Well, that's because you're a good person, Stephen. That's so. Congratulations. Yes.
Let's look at morality generally. I mean, if we were to use certain examples of what we consider to be bad, then we like to think that common sense should prevail here, and that we know that's bad. But clearly, we know that there are certain parts of the world where culturally they haven't been influenced by Christianity, and they will still think that things like marital rape is fine, and slavery is perfectly fine. I mean, they're to the point where you understand what I mean?
So-
I'm going to call you out on a couple of things there, Stephen, because first of all, I agree with the rhetorical goal of saying that these are backwards societies that are doing silly, awful things. And I think that is exactly what we're seeing in the Bible, that these are the people who wrote the Bible were backwards ass people who had horrible beliefs and practices, and they wrote them down as if God was saying to do them because they thought they were good people. I agree with that concept, and I think that's what we're seeing in the Bible. I don't think it's real. I think it is an artifact of Iron Age Palestinian goat herders who wrote down the horrible shit they were doing, and that's what we're seeing played out here. But what I think is more important is that you, in your statement there, just said these are parts of the world that haven't been exposed to Christianity, and that's why they're doing these things, as if Christianity wasn't a major driving factor in the slave trade. Christianity, here in the U.S., we had slavery because Christians upheld it, because the Confederate States of America were a Christian nation that the articles or the Declaration of Secession said this is the law of the Christian God that any Christian nation would recognize as valid, that we should keep these slaves. You talked about marital rape. The Bible is very clear that wives are to be submissive to their husband, and I can tell you a dozen examples of men in culture here in America of Christian men raping their wives because they believe that is their wifely duty to never say no, because that's what God commands of them. There are Christians who are doing the things that you're saying are evil.
Morality, if we're saying that morality, because obviously as an atheist, you can't obviously say that morality is objective. You're going to work on the basis of it's subjective. Now that in itself is quite tricky, because now you guys obviously
as are you as a Christian, by the way.
Well, okay. So, but as advocates of atheism and as advocates of humanism, clearly, this is where we need to get down to have conversations here. Because if Christianity's got us to a point where morally we may have got to a point where it may have had some benefits, whether that's because it's been written into especially British law, which has obviously heavily influenced American law. We know, and it's quite clear, and if you guys are clued up on this enough, morality has been our morality in the West has been very heavily influenced by Christianity in some respects. Now,
absolutely not.
I would say this, and I would say this: if we are going to move away from that, and we're going to start moving towards a humanist, secular society, which quite clearly the West is heading anyway. The West is heading that way. Probably has since the 60s, the sexual revolution. I think that was a real driver of what you would call Christian morals decline in America, Britain, and the West, and we're moving towards where we are now. You could argue that morality, in some ways, in terms of the way we look around, especially in the West, is a little bit confused with itself. I don't even know where we're going morally, to be honest with you. So, as a moral compass, we're going around in circles. Now, whether you agree with it or not,
I strongly disagree with your assertion.
Would you say morality is all over the place now? We've got no common ground other than what you hope is a human.
I don't say that.
Manifesto.
I don't say that. I think that I strongly disagree with your assertion that our Western society was heavily influenced by Christianity. Yes. Christian morality. No, it is morality that has evolved through reason and thought and just the exact same way that every other part of culture has evolved over thousands of years. There is a reason, right now, not because of the sexual revolution or anything like that, you do not exhibit a biblical morality. And that's why you're not in jail, because you would never stone a child to death for back to assassinating their parents, as the book of Exodus tells you to do. So I don't think that's reasonable at all. John, you were trying to say something a minute ago. What were you?
Morality evolves, but so you reckon it can?
Yes.
How does morality? How do we in the West sit here right now, high and mighty, if you want to call it that, where we can point the fingers at other civilizations and cultures in the 21st century and say, we are right, you are wrong, you need to lead by what shapes, if we're talking about evolution here, why isn't humanity collectively, no matter what part of the world they're in, how come none of us have evolved? We're talking about evolution here, the brain and what have you, and how have we not sort of come to the same conclusion? Why is it we are ahead compared to others? Well, could you
We're not.
Could you maybe
I don't understand what that means.
Yeah,
So,
see that question is largely rooted in ethnocentrism. You are looking at your culture as if it is so vastly morally
no, I'm
superior
not.
to so many other cultures, and it
We just
isn't.
pointed the finger earlier on. I think one of you guys mentioned it, saying obviously, you know, there are other cultures now, um, whether they're influenced by Islam or Hinduism. I'm not going to go down that road. But if there are certain cultures right now who clearly think it's totally normal for other things to be acceptable, whereas we in the West haven't, what do you think's made us get to the point where we are now, where we can point a finger at them and say, "Hey, you need to step up morally because we're ahead of you in that respect." That's no, I'm not going. That's we must
Who
be thinking
says
along
that?
this line.
Yeah, it's nobody
I
says
mean,
that.
I think
Nobody's
I think that
serious.
we can well, yeah, I think that we can use like secular humanism as well as like a general sense of human rights in order to correctly identify when human rights are being violated. So like I was going to say earlier, you know, we can be objective about morality, but I don't think that morality can be itself objective. Like and when you say objective, what I hear is transcendental, like something that supersedes like human understanding and human driven ingenuity and all this other stuff in this respect. So is that what you're trying to say about morality, that Christian morality, the morality of the Bible, is somehow transcendental, like it's absolute?
No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, because you mentioned the word evolved, and obviously, obviously that can be used in different contexts. But if you said that
I can be
morality is
very clear about the
evolved,
context to clear that up if you'd like.
yes, please.
So when I say that morality evolved, that has two meanings. Number one, I mean biological evolution, in the fact that morality is an evolved trait that we see not just in humans, but in other non-human animals as well, that it is actually adaptive and that it causes us to be better animals that live in better, healthier societies. And I also mean evolve from a cultural perspective, the same way that clothing evolves, the same way that hairstyles evolve, the same way that language evolves, whatever, is that this is something that we have. And as we talk about it and as generations pass and we criticize ourselves and criticize each other, we come to better and better and better understandings of what actually works best for more people. And so we evolve our morality. And so we can see when we look at like universal moral principles, like say, for example, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights passed by the UN, right? If we look at that, we can say, okay, here are some pretty well understood multinational principles of bodily autonomy, of sovereignty, of the right to food and water and shelter, and all these basic things that make life livable as a person in a global society. And we can see where all countries, not just some foreign nation from somewhere else, but the UK and the US as well, are falling massively behind on those principles and others. To be able to look around and say there's these other places that haven't been influenced by Christianity yet, and so they're doing these bad things, is to be massively ignorant of how the much evil Christianity has been responsible for in this world. That all the slavery and spousal rape and all the things you talk about, all of that has been due to Christianity as well, if not solely and mainly because of Christianity at sometimes. And also, it's to be profoundly ignorant of the fact it's also to be profoundly ignorant of the fact that your culture that you live in has a whole hell of a lot of stuff to be criticized for that other cultures aren't doing. So there's plenty of places around the world that aren't doing the bad shit that the UK and the US are doing right now and don't have the problems that our countries have and don't have the moral failings that our countries have. And they should be criticizing us the way that you are currently criticizing and looking down on other people.
If it's subjective, okay, so if morality is subjective and we're working off that basis, then and it's been driven through and it's been evolved through to the point where we're starting to continually learn what's right and wrong, or is it just something that's inherently we should know what's right and wrong, or do we have to constantly evolve how we understand what right and wrong is?
No, there's a lot to be said. There is I'm sorry, John. I just, that's annoying. There's very clear. I'm going to let you speak. There's very clearly a major nurture aspect to that, where people have to be trained what right and wrong is. There's some of it that's inherent, absolutely. but there's a major part of it that needs to be taught, and there's a million and one examples of that. John, what were you saying before I so rudely interrupted you?
Oh no, you're perfectly fine. I was just gonna say that, yeah, nobody like pops out of the womb, knowing morality necessarily. At least not our social norms now. I mean, there is some intuitive nature to like people being able to come to these moral conclusions and everything, but I think that for a large part of it is just like the social norms of each society. So like if you're born in Japan, you're going to have a different set of social norms than if you're born in the USA versus if you're born in somewhere in Europe. So like you're going to have different social norms that are part of the society that you are born into. And when we talk about things being intuitive, we're talking about things that, as far as like the society that you brought, like if you're brought up in Western society, like there's certain attributes that overlap in most societies, like the idea that it's wrong to murder another person. Hold on, I'm still talking. You've been monologuing a whole fucking lot. And so, I mean, that's just what I would say. But I also, I have a lot of theological questions for you whenever we get there, like, whether or not the God of the New Testament is the same in the past as he is in the present and as he will be in the future, and whether or not Jesus is God. Like, I have a lot of different questions about your theology, because that kind of affects like how we take the Old Testament and how we apply that to like New Testament stuff.
There's a lot of questions there, but I'd love to hear your response to what we just said.
Yeah, I know.
Well, look, I mean, for me, when it comes to morality, I think it's a bit concerning if we do go down a path where we believe that if there isn't a moral arbiter, and that's fine, that's something I know you guys need to obviously stick to. There's too much inconsistency. I think the moral compass is all over the place. Okay. And I think
so let's talk about that.
Yeah, hold on. I'll let you guys talk for 10 minutes. Okay, just give me a chance now. Yeah. So I think personally there is, and these are all just our personal interpretations. We may have a collective agreement among our group, but this is my personal opinion. Okay. Ultimately, if we are looking at different cultures and we have different morality, and it's all subjective depending on who you speak to. Even your own neighbour, even if they're living in the same town, everybody has a different, other than the obvious, okay, murder, rape, all these kind of things. When it comes to other things, like morality, why is it then that everybody has a different opinion if you are working on the basis that it's evolved and if you're talking about it being socially, and I'm just trying to quote here, not quote, but if morally, if it's subjective, then is that I mean, do we have to work with it, or is that you're just saying we have to work with it, and eventually we'd all just come and meet in the middle, eventually?
I'm saying that if you properly apply skepticism and reason, we will inevitably come to a lot of the same conclusions. It will be fuzzy and it will be imperfect. That's how all social systems are. But eventually we will come to a rational understanding of human health and flourishing and well-being based around objective principles to make it as realistic and as, I don't want to use the word mathematical, but as objective as possible. So yes, what we see with morality all over the world, including right now, especially throughout history, but even just right now, we see it as something that is built every day, that is argued and agreed upon and rationalized and discussed and debated, and for lack of a better word, intelligently designed every single day, generation to generation, it changes. My generation has very strongly different moral principles than my parents' generation, and they had different ones than theirs before them, and it gets better and better and better and better all the time, and it counts for more people unless there's a massive backslide. You talked about whether or not this thing is innate or not. Some parts of it are. You can see some moral behaviors in children that don't need to be learned because they just know that it makes them happy to make people smile. You can also see children that are indoctrinated into Nazi shit and into Klan shit and into all sorts of hateful and bigoted ideologies and taught to enjoy hurting other people. You can see children. I remember a case here in the US not too long ago of a kid who was incredibly rich, who ran over some person with their car and genuinely could not understand why that was a problem because they were poor, which means they weren't worth anything. So like, there's plenty of examples of you can take a child and fuck them up by teaching them awful things and twisting their morality. That is obviously the case. That's why education is so important. And one of the better parts of education is multiculturalism and teaching people that everybody has different opinions and different ideas and different ways of looking at the world, and finding universal moral principles that we can apply to every situation, and find a foundational principle like, say, bodily autonomy, like, say, democracy, like, say, justice, like whatever, that we can then try to universally apply to a diverse amount of situations to come to equally good outcomes as much as possible.
I mean, it just seems to me that, you know, if the problem I find is that if you've got people, if we're trying to push individualism, people expressing themselves, and that's fine, you know, and it sounds within reason and not the right thing to do, surely that's going to continue to allow people to have just differences of opinion. You know, if there's not one universal thing that brings people together in terms of everybody's on the same page, and that's probably one of the things you could say, if there's anything that you could say about the benefits of religion in some respects, is that people seem to have a collective, not, obviously I know people disagree in certain things of, you know, but more often than not, I would like to think that if there's a belief system in place, doesn't necessarily have to be religion. It could be politics. It could be a political system at some point. It seems to be there's more cohesion. But if you live in, if I look at the West, and I believe that there's so many different kind of offshoots of all different types of belief systems and different kind of you know, morality. I guess we can throw that back into the mix. I just don't see where the West, and you will focus on that for the moment, how that can continue to go in the right direction when clearly there's so many different directions that people just want to take it, and we can't even impose anything on anyone in particular, because in doing so that would be almost you know, kind of almost their freedoms are taken away, if that makes sense. It's like, how can we instill moral? Because I think laws keep, laws isn't it? Laws keep you know.
No, they don't. And also, you say that as if it's lamentable. I think that homogeneity of thought in religion, morality, or politics is a bad thing. I think that diversity of thought and diversity of opinion is a good thing, because if the religious, moral, political, whatever, like the conceptual paradigm that is currently dominating the cultural landscape, if that paradigm is worth a damn, then it will stand up to scrutiny and dissent. If it isn't, it won't, and it will be replaced by something better. Homogeneity of thought in politics, in morality, whatever, is a great way to instill dogma and stupidity where people don't have the ability to progress and make things better for themselves or for each other. Dissent, disagreement, diversity is the only path towards progress and the only guarantee for freedom.
So I think you use, I mean, just, I'm going to throw it in there just to play devil's advocate. Abortion, for example, like obviously that's a very moral kind of thing that gets discussed. And you know, what's your thoughts on that? Especially when Christians tend to be the only ones that seem to be vocal when it comes to being
abortion is healthcare.
Yep.
Abortion's healthcare.
Abortion is healthcare, and healthcare should be free.
As in health and in care. So if we just merging those two words together, literally, you're saying that it's beneficial for the health, and also it's caring. Yeah, so health.
It is caring for their health. Yes, it is caring for the health of the person with a uterus who is currently pregnant.
Right. Okay. So this is interesting. So, how many abortions were in America last year? How many abortions took place in America last year? Do you know?
Couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I could tell you, however, that you mentioned that this is something that only Christians are loud about. That is also a recent development. Catholics and specifically Catholics and evangelicals specifically used to be very, very vocally pro-choice because the Bible talks about that. The Bible says that you were not truly alive until after you're born, that life begins at your first breath. And also they were very strongly for bodily autonomy. It is only after a right-wing political lobby started pressing on religion this way that it now switched and has become, in the last, I believe, 40 years, a major religious issue for right-wing Christians. What were you saying, John?
I looked it up real quick on Google. According to the Guttmacher Institute, an estimated 1,038,100 abortions were provided in the U.S. in 2024.
Right, that's just the U.S. alone, so we're not talking about worldwide here. Okay, so
nope.
All right,
millions. We can say millions.
Okay, millions. So there's millions. Right. Okay. So, what do we think has led up to the reasons why these abortions took place?
I don't
Lots
care.
Of things. Yeah, I don't care, and also there would be a tremendous amount of reasons.
No, hold on a second. It's a fair question that I've asked you because I think this ties back.
Hold on. Regardless of how fair the question is, what we're trying to tell you is that it does not matter whatsoever what reason a woman has to seek health care, or a person that's pregnant has to seek health care. It doesn't matter. It does not matter why they went. No, it doesn't. Does it matter the reasons why you went to the emergency room for a broken fucking arm? Like, does that matter?
I don't think that's the same.
Is it a fair question to be like, what were you doing when you broke your arm?
I don't think that's a good analogy, breaking an arm compared to an abortion. I think those two are quite different.
I'm saying, no, I mean,
I know you're very, obviously you guys are very articulate, very smart, intelligent men, but I don't think that's the best analogy there.
You fooled. No, but that's the thing. If you have cancer treatment, or if you have diabetes treatment, or if you have a broken limb that you need treated, or if you have a headache that you need treated, if you have anything from a hangnail to a car accident and everything in between, if you need health care, it doesn't matter what your reasons are, you deserve health care.
Now, so somebody didn't mean to get cancer, and somebody didn't mean to break. Somebody didn't mean to get cancer, and somebody didn't obviously nobody meant to get their arm broken either. So that would then logically conclude that people didn't mean to get pregnant either.
Oh, okay, fucking God! Are you seriously going here?
That's a ridiculous thing to pull out of what we just said. So let me be even more clear. Let me be even more clear, Stephen. If that's the direction you want to go with it, which is silly as shit, let me take even one step further. If you, Stephen, today wake up and decide to start stabbing yourself in the leg for no fucking reason, but because you just felt like it and you did it deliberately, you should go to the doctor and get that shit stitched up. And I'm not going to say that you did it to yourself and it's your fault or anything like that. Whether it's intentional or not, whether it's planned or not, whether anything, it doesn't matter. If somebody is pregnant and they don't want to be anymore, they should have access to that health care.
I know you guys are better at debating than I am, so let's just get one thing clear here. Do you, as you're saying these things, do you already know potentially the flaws in what you're saying in terms of, because you'll come to a very quick conclusion just to shut the conversation down. Are you doing it because you might know what I potentially might be coming back with and how I might tie that into morality?
I am giving you straightforward answers. I'm not trying to shut your conversation down. I'm trying to avoid any stupid loopholes.
Well, no, because I think there are loopholes, and so you may call them stupid, but I think there are loopholes here, and I want to be able to...
I didn't call you stupid. I called the loopholes stupid.
Sorry, my apologies. Can I flesh these out a little bit? Are you willing to hear what... And if you want to pull me up,
but can I? Yeah. Well, hold on. Before you move on to that, I do want to say something right here. I first saw your the point that you were trying to make. It felt like you were trying to go to the direction that anybody that gets pregnant knew that they could get pregnant or were trying to get pregnant, or like it's somehow their choice to have unprotected sex or sex where they would get pregnant. That's where it seemed
Well,
like you were going, at the shithead position to go, because I feel like even you know about rape, even you know about how women are violated on a daily basis, and they do not choose to get pregnant in those situations. So regardless of how somebody becomes pregnant, hold on, regardless of how somebody becomes pregnant, they deserve health care.
That's exactly.
I'm going to meet in the middle with you. I think, because this is where I think logic should really kind of win here. Okay, at the end of the day, because we talked about the millions, and this is just in the US alone. Okay, if we're going to really go down the road where we are going to say that out of those millions of people that had an abortion in the US alone, if we're going to work on the percentage of how many of those were out of rape and how many of those were out of rare medical emergencies, where if the abortion doesn't
matter.
And then no, hear me out, please. Well, I think it does, because I think there's a lot. So that's a lot of abortions.
I don't really give a fuck. I mean, at this point, I really don't give a fuck,
man.
Well, I give a fuck, because clearly, as a society, if we want to flourish, because obviously you're going to go the humanist, secular route, because that's progress. Surely we need to tackle, why are there millions of abortions taking place? You can't just turn around and say, I don't give a fuck. Because
I don't give a fuck how many. Have 2 million abortions. Have 3 million abortions. I really don't give a fuck, Stephen.
You're talking about progress, yes? So progress, surely we want to be able to bring that number down, yes? Would it be logical?
No, Stephen, I'm sorry.
We can't avoid abortion. Abortion will always happen. We know that. Okay, we know abortion. It's there to stay. Can we bring it down, gentlemen?
Yes, we can. Stephen, here's the problem. Stephen. Oh my God. Stephen. Yes, we can bring it down, and I'm going to tell you how in just a second. The problem is, the reason why we keep interrupting you and keep having this hang up is because you continue to approach this conversation from the framework that abortion is this horrible, undesirable thing that nobody should want. And that's simply not. I want people to have access to abortion. I don't care whether they're sad about it, happy about it, whether they just woke up one morning and were like, fuck yeah, abortion. I don't care. I want them to have access to it, and I want it to be free. I'm all about free healthcare. Abortion is very clearly healthcare. More importantly, it is protecting someone's bodily autonomy. I think it's a good, safe, healthy, natural, normal, good thing that should be protected by our society. So yes, if you want to bring abortion numbers down, there are ways to do that, but it's imperative that you understand that you are coming from a completely different angle than us when you're talking about abortion, because you are immediately seeing it as this negative thing that we have to get rid of in any way that we can try to find a way to get abortion numbers down. I'm not there with you. Now, as far as trying to reduce abortion numbers, I would tying in saying unwanted pregnancy numbers that come down, because the main bulk of abortions, because of unintended pregnancy, because of rape, incest, whatever, those down to bring down. Let's work on bringing those down. The abortions that are a result of medical necessity, somebody who's later in pregnancy and has a major complication either with themselves or with their fetus or whatever it may be, those things we're never going to fix. Those are natural parts of being pregnant. Those are the risks and complications that come along with that. So that's not something to fix. In terms of unintended pregnancy, unwanted pregnancy, teen pregnancy, those things, sure, we can bring those down. And you know how we do it? We do it with comprehensive sex education, access to contraception, and destigmatization of sex. By doing those things, we see abortion numbers drop dramatically. When people have comprehensive education about sex, active access to contraception, and they're not shamed for sexual behavior, and they don't have Christians outside the abortion clinic cheering at them, chanting at them, yelling at them, telling them that they're murdering a baby, then abortion numbers go down quite a bit. When women are empowered to control their own bodies, abortions go down quite a bit. When divorce is allowed, abortions go down quite a bit. All of these things that empower people to have better responsibility and accessibility to healthcare and better power and control over their own bodies, that is what brings those numbers down. Same exact thing, by the way, with sexually transmitted infections and teen pregnancy. What does not work is any kind of ban, regulation, restriction, shaming, or religiosity. There is no evidence that shows those things work. In fact, it makes those things worse.
Well, I think there are two scenarios, and maybe a third. If you can give me a third, that's fine. I reckon there are certain circumstances where, at the end of the day, it cannot be helped. Okay, if somebody has been, again, I mean, someone's been raped, then of course, then and there are some women out there who choose to keep the child and give it up for adoption, and we can probably look at that and think, you know what, that's maybe fair play. That may be a moral thing that they've done on that occasion. They don't have to, and no way should a society force. It depends on how, if it's in a horrific event, they may, 9 times out of 10, I'm sure they do, they choose to wish to get an abortion, and I'll 100% support them on that, because at the end of the day, that it's a horrific event, and they don't like the idea. Some people may decide to give up the child for abortion. I mean, there's literally millions of families out there who would do anything for a child, and I'm just putting it out there. If there was something in place where the option was given, the child is born, and then that child gets to live a life. They don't even need to know that they were born out of rape. They've just been given up for adoption, and the family who gets given that child doesn't necessarily need to know that the child was born out of rape either. But that's a child gets to live a life, and
the person who was raped in that scenario, not judging their decision, if that's what they choose to do, that's great. But that should not be encouraged as a moral good, nor should it ever be enforced as the only way to do that. You agree with me on that, right?
Yeah, I agree. It's not being encouraged. Not being encouraged. Not being enforced.
So Stephen, sorry for interrupting. I took something differently out of that than what Forrest did. What I got out of that was that you would force somebody to have a baby.
100% no. I wouldn't force. I don't know if you heard what I just said towards the end there. I think because obviously abortion is so prevalent, and I wouldn't go necessarily say it's easy, but in terms of ease of access, yes, but in terms of it's just the norm these days. That people know that that's something that they can just go and do straight away, be done with it.
Right. Okay, Stephen, you're very long-winded. Yeah. Hold on, Stephen, I just want to get clarification on something. Do you think that an abortion should ever be denied? Like if somebody wanted an abortion, do you think that there's a context, a situation where denial is appropriate?
I can lead to that in a moment, and because I think if you're going to get me to answer that now, no, hear me out. The reason, hear me.
Yes. No, hear me out. That's a yes, because you're like, I got to contextualize it so I don't seem shitty.
Brilliant. No, awesome. No, I love it. Yeah, that's fine. Got me in a corner there, lads, haven't you? Got me in a corner there. But hear me out, okay? Let's focus on the millions of abortions that took place. The rare ones, which are down to rape and medical emergencies. I cannot see. Obviously, if you can try and pull the statistics up, that'd be great. But I cannot foresee a scenario where, out of those millions, half of them, say 500,000, is based out of people being raped and people having medical emergencies. Okay.
Why does it matter?
If we're collectively working together to try and figure out how to bring these numbers down,
Stephen, the reason why this is fuck, man, it's just what it sounds like you're about to say, and I just don't want to wait 20 minutes for you to say it. What it sounds like you're about to say is that, sure, the rape and the medical emergency stuff, those we can't help, and those should be blah, blah, blah. However, there is X percentage of them that are just unnecessary and unreasonable, so we should try to stop those. And we're going to say, I just gave you several ways you can stop those by giving people bodily autonomy, giving people health care. And then you're going to say some collection of noises that ends with, and that's why we should be banning rape or banning abortion in these cases. People should not be allowed to have abortions in these cases.
I'm not saying we should ban abortion. I think abortion, in some ways, I understand. Probably there is a.
So then, can you answer John's question?
Sorry, what was John's question? Sorry.
So then, can you answer John's question? Is there ever a context in which you think someone should be denied an abortion?
I believe that. Okay, yes.
That's that we disagree.
You want to force somebody to have a child. No, that's what it resolves.
That means.
Okay.
Do you know there are hardly any? Do you know there are hardly any Down syndrome? Been literally pretty much 0 births of people with Down syndrome in Finland. I believe it's Finland. Are
I
you
don't give
aware
a
of that
fuck.
one?
I don't know why this matters. No. I just want you to acknowledge. Hold on. I need you. Okay, part of my ADHD just needs you to acknowledge the fact. No, Stephen, I need you to acknowledge the fact that you've said that, yes, I think in some situations, there are some contexts in which forcing a woman, a person, to give birth is appropriate. Do you acknowledge Finland, that you're saying that?
In Finland, I'm thinking if someone.
Oh my God!
It's appropriate in Finland, y'all.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to answer your question. Yeah, so
would you?
Finland,
so hold on. Would you? Hold on, Stephen. Would you force an 11-year-old girl to have a child?
You always use the most rarest of things just to try and back up your claim.
That's unfortunately not rare.
It's ridiculous. It's funny. Come on. It's just. I mean, I am actually laughing here. I mean, it's just like you're using the most rarest.
I'm not trying to make you laugh, or I'm not trying to do anything to make you laugh or anything. This is a real situation that's happened in what was it, Indiana, Illinois, one of those I states. It's something that really happened. An 11-year-old girl was raped by an uncle or something like that, and then she had to go to a completely different state in order to get an abortion. Now, I get that this falls in that narrow margin that you're saying is like an appropriate time to give an abortion, but I'm talking about, like, well, let's just say a girl, quote unquote, and because I know how you're probably thinking, quote unquote, willingly has sex and gets pregnant, right? Mm-hmm. That's not a thing that happens, but for the purposes of this thought experiment, we're going there. Let's just say she willingly does it. You think that an 11-year-old girl should be forced to give birth to a child?
No, I think I didn't bring up any age in my example earlier on. But if there was a situation,
I'm not basing it on age.
Yeah, no, I'm not basing it on age. Well, I didn't bring up age earlier on. You know that, guys. Stephen.
I'm not basing it on age. I'm not saying because she's 11, she deserves to have like an abortion, or she is going to have an abortion. I'm saying that in this particular instance, following your particular criteria, you have said that there's a portion of the population that should be forced to have a child. Part of that population would be 11-year-old girls that, in your particular view, would quote unquote choose to have sex and get pregnant.
I started off my conversation earlier on by explicitly mentioning such a young age, and then following it up with they should be forced. I think clearly that I wouldn't be getting off to a good start.
So then why don't you enlighten us? Tell us.
I would agree with you. If an 11-year-old girl was raped, I think under the circumstances, because of how traumatic that is. Because I'm a different breed. I'm not your typical.
So Stephen, just to clarify.
Yeah.
Oh just to salvage you a little bit there, Stephen, would you say that there's like an 11-year-old girl just simply without any kind of clarification, or not clarification, but without any stipulations, they would like that 11-year-old child would not be able to consent to sex?
Well, of course not. And I also believe an
11-year-old would be raped, right? Under your idea?
I also think it wouldn't make much sense for anybody to sit down, an adult to sit down with that child and say, look, I think, there are a couple of options here, I think that's a bit stupid as well. I think under the circumstances, I think an abortion sounds like the most morally right choice under the circumstances. I don't think it would make much sense. Common sense.
So then can you
not fail there? Doesn't
can you please enlighten us then, if we can agree that that's bad? Yep. What is the line then where you say, okay, now in this situation, now I think it is appropriate to force someone to be pregnant and give birth to a child? What is the situation in which you think it's appropriate to force someone to be pregnant?
I'll try to use one example. So we've seen a lot of I know them, I've seen them, I've met them. I've seen them. They work perfectly fine. In fact, I think the world would be a better place if there was more of these children and people, because I think they're wonderful people and they're harmless. People with Down syndrome, okay, lovely human beings. They can still crack on with life, and great progress in scientific progress has allowed them to live a lot longer lives than they used to. We see them in America. We see them in the UK. We see them in most places in the world. But in Finland, for example, are supposedly, I would imagine, a very atheist, progressive, humanist country. They still, and I believe it is Finland. There is pretty much zero Down syndrome kids, because when it gets detected earlier on that their child has Down syndrome, they are pretty much encouraged or pressured to go have an abortion. Do you think that sounds about right? Does that sound right?
So you think
that sound like, that sound like a moral thing to do? Because
you think because you don't like the way that some people are choosing to use abortion, you think that it is appropriate to force people to be pregnant against their will.
Not against their will, but they're obviously being pressured to have a different alternative.
It is absolutely against their will. If they want to have an abortion and you're saying no, then you are forcing them to be pregnant against their will. So at the end of the day,
we've got a society here where it's so normal to do that. It's just second nature now to them. It's like, oh, your child's got Down syndrome. Let's go and book you an appointment next week to have an abortion. Like, they don't even really have a choice. I mean, it's a social.
So you're saying,
sort of,
but
thing that's encouraged.
Stephen, that's not the question you were asked. You were not asked, should people be pressured or not? You were asked, when is it appropriate to force someone to be pregnant, to deny them access to abortion? And this was the answer you gave. This was the example you came up with, is that in this scenario, too many people are having abortions because they see a Down syndrome child, and so we should take away their right to have an abortion. And now you're pivoting and saying, no, they just shouldn't be pressured. I agree they shouldn't be pressured, but they should have the right.
Well, you're so fixated on rights in terms of the actual individual's rights. I'm talking about a moral right here. So we can use the word right, but let's use it in a moral context. You're so fixated on individual rights here. You're not thinking about the actual bigger picture here. We're looking at a society that seems in Finland that over decades has made it completely normal for people when they're pregnant, not through rape or anything else. They probably even wanted to have a family. Obviously, it's just a normal occurrence of two consenting adults having sex, and it results in that woman getting pregnant. And then when that woman, when they found out that woman's got Down syndrome, it's something that's sort of embedded into the psyche of how that society works, that they think is totally normal and acceptable for them to just have an abortion. That Down syndrome is almost like it's going to be problems for their society.
And so we're going to ask again, is your solution to that to deny someone access to abortion because you suspect that they're doing it because they don't want to have a child with Down syndrome?
Just because they have Down syndrome. Because we've clearly seen today in the 21st century...
I'm asking you a specific question. Stephen, nobody is arguing with you about whether or not the life of a child with Down syndrome is fruitful or worth it or any of the... I'm asking you, are you then suggesting that we should deny people access to abortion if we suspect that they are getting an abortion to avoid having a child with Down syndrome?
If the situation is where the person who instigates it, okay, so the woman...
That is a yes or no question.
No, it's not a yes or no question because it's a very deep question. It's not simple.
I am asking you, in this scenario, do you deny someone access to abortion? That is a yes or no question. Someone comes into the abortion clinic and they say, I'm pregnant and I suspect that my child will have Down syndrome. Therefore, I would like to have an abortion. You have a big red stamp and a big green stamp, and you can either say yes or no. Do you think that person should be denied access to abortion because of the reason why they're getting it? Yes or no?
We are envisioning a situation where someone walks in and I'm standing there with a stamp. So that's how stupid it is, right? So
I'm trying to make it as simple as possible so you can quit dodging the question. Because you keep fucking bitching out of the answer that you walked yourself into. I'm trying to make it very simple so that you can't dodge it anymore.
An answer which basically is in your favor. That's what it is.
No, I don't. I just want you to be fucking honest. I just want you to give me an honest answer.
I'll be fucking honest with you, okay?
Yes or no, Stephen?
Listen to me. If someone walks in and says, I want to have an abortion, and I say, why? Because surely they must still ask that even in abortion clinics. They'll just say, yes, of course, sir. Yes, sorry, not. Yes, of course, madam. Let's just go and get you booked in. They must,
Oh, my
surely
fucking
there must
God.
be people that sit there and ask why. Do people ask why?
Can you just tell me the fucking answer?
I'm asking you a question. When someone walks into an
Oh, my
abortion clinic,
fuck.
I want an abortion, do they ask that woman why?
They probably do for epidemiological reasons. Nothing matters. I wouldn't ask them why on a moral basis. That doesn't matter. I am now asking you if this person told you that they're having an abortion to get rid of the possibility of a Down syndrome pregnancy. Would you deny them access to abortion or fucking not, Stephen?
I would turn around and say to him, and obviously not just my own personal opinion, because obviously it needs to be a collective agreement within the clinic, right?
Oh my God.
Just listen to me, will ya?
Just answer. It's a one-word answer.
I will fucking answer, you twat.
Shut fucking, just no, John.
I love this.
John, hold on. Just Steven, shut the fuck up. John, if someone comes in, if you're managing a convenience store and someone comes in to try to buy beer and you find out they're under the age of 21, would you sell them beer?
Fuck no.
Yeah, he would. Nobody would, wouldn't he?
Simple answer. Simple answer. See that? He was presented with an immoral situation and he said no. It's really easy. So now, Stephen, if someone came into the abortion clinic that you're running for whatever fucking reason and said, I want to have an abortion because I don't want a child with Down syndrome, would you allow them to have the abortion or not?
I would say probably no.
Okay, then you just said the thing that we spent 20 minutes.
Didn't we?
No, Stephen, you self-important fuck. Pay attention. 20 goddamn minutes ago, 20 fucking minutes ago, we suggested that you would. I'm just going to put you on mute because you can't shut the fuck up. 20 goddamn minutes ago, we accused you of wanting to force someone to be pregnant against their will. And you said, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. What a despicable situation. Oh, how could you accuse me of such a thing? And now here we are, where after we pulled hen's teeth to get there, you finally admit that if someone came in wanting an abortion for a reason that you deem distasteful, you would then say, no, you are not allowed to have access to this healthcare. You are not allowed control over your own body. You are forced to be pregnant. Can you for a fucking second just own up to the fact that that is your actual goddamn position?
Oh, am I unmuted now?
Yes. Answer the question.
I will answer the question. In that scenario, I would say no.
I just recited that to you. The question I just asked you. The question I just asked you, Stephen. The question I just asked you, Stephen, is do you now finally agree with what we said 20 minutes ago? You're still talking, and this is why you don't know what the question is. Do you now finally agree with what we said 20 minutes ago, which is that by your view here, what you're saying is that you would force people to be pregnant against their will in certain situations based on your morality?
Based on my morality? What, so you and I don't share that morality then?
No, we don't. I think that as we spent 20 minutes explaining at the beginning, I think that anybody who wants an abortion for any reason should have access to that health care. They should be allowed to get that abortion. There should not be a question as to why to qualify them for the care. There should be a question as to why for epidemiological reasons, for data tracking, for all sorts of other reasons. But there is no way in hell that I would ever support a qualification exam to get access to health care of any kind. You cannot say you don't want to get an abortion for the reason that I want you to, therefore you don't get it. That's not appropriate. I don't support that at all. You do. You are saying that if someone wants an abortion for a reason you don't like, then they shouldn't get it.
There has to be a moral line in there, in place. There has to be something.
No, there doesn't. The moral line, Stephen, is that they should have access to health care.
Right. Okay. I would actually say that out of those millions of abortions, I would say a good percentage of those are also down to female infanticide.
Oh my God, dude. Yes. First of all, no, that's not infanticide. And second of all, yes, gender.
We're talking about certain scenarios where we may need to turn around and say to that person, I'm sorry, but I don't think it's right in this situation to grant you an abortion, because we need to get down to the fact as to why they're getting an abortion.
I don't know how to make it any more clear to you. We have explained this a dozen times, and you keep running your head against the same brick wall as if it's going to break this time, and it fucking won't. We don't think there's any qualification for abortion. You should be able to get an abortion if you want an abortion, period. The moral line for us is bodily autonomy. You're allowed to decide what happens to your body. You're allowed to decide who gets to use your organs to survive. You're allowed to decide who lives in your uterus. You're allowed to decide what happens to your body. That's the moral line. Saying that abortion should be restricted in any capacity for any reason is violating that moral principle. So no, we don't think that there should be any case in which someone comes in and says, I want to have an abortion because I just fucking feel like it, and this is my third one this week, and I love abortions. They're tons of fun. I just love having abortions. It's my favorite pastime. I want to have another abortion today. I don't fucking care. You're getting an abortion because you want one. It's the same thing as a tattoo or a piercing or any other thing that deals with your bodily autonomy. If you want to do something to your body, you should be allowed to do it.
Have you seen how, because you've had constant debates about this topic, you've almost sort of desensitized and dehumanized the situation to the point where it's just so all these analogies that you guys use just to try and
hold on, Stephen. I have to start
the most human part.
Yeah, so sorry, Stephen. I've muted you. I've muted you. The only person that's dehumanizing individuals is you. We are humanizing individuals. We considering the human right to health care. That's what we're doing. You're the one that's dehumanizing people. You're the one who's wanting to force people to have babies when they obviously don't want to. You're the one that's passing some kind of judgment on people based on the reasons why they're pregnant. We don't give a fuck why they want an abortion. We just think that they deserve health care. So you're unmuted now. Don't try to gaslight us on this.
Gaslighting you. So obviously, this is a very heated debate, and obviously, all three of us are going to raise our voices and talk over each other.
It doesn't have to be. The only reason why John and I are raising our voices is because you refuse to answer a straightforward question.
And would you say this is a very important topic that needs to be debated?
Yes, because there's a lot of places around the world that think like you do, that certain aspects of healthcare should be restricted based on some sort of bullshit moral test.
Right. Now, you could have just answered that as yes, but you followed it up, and that's all I'm doing as well. I'm giving you an answer, but then
yes, but I gave you a one-word answer first and then elaborated.
That's fine.
When we asked you, do you think it's appropriate to force someone to be pregnant against their will, went on some bullshit diatribe about Down syndrome kids in Finland in order to get to the point that eventually, yes, you do think that people should be forced to be pregnant against their will if they disagree with Stephen's sensibilities.
Now, the thing, what I would say is the way you're wording it clearly is going to basically make me feel like if I answer that question, it's going to sound ridiculous by giving you a yes
does
or no.
Sound ridiculous. Maybe you should feel ridiculous.
Okay,
maybe you have a ridiculous answer.
Okay, all right. And so, would you say that it sounds ridiculous if there was a humanist society or a secular society? It doesn't have to be Christian or religious or anything. Society, but they've made it their decision to say, look, we're going to try to reduce the numbers of pregnancies down. Okay. Abortions down. So I got my words wrong there. We're going to try to reduce the amount of abortions that take place. The way we're going to do that is by not just letting anybody come in, no questions asked. I know there's going to be certain questions, obviously, like you talked about, but obviously we need to get, as a collective society, we need to get to the bottom as to why there have been so many abortions taking place. Now, we need to ask some certain questions, okay? Surely that's the only way you can do it, to get to the bottom and try to reduce the numbers down. I know you talked about it earlier on, about certain ways we can do it. But if people are going in there, left, right, and centre, getting abortions because and I'm using Finland as an example again, because society has told them that as soon as they realise that their child has got Down syndrome, they should just go have an abortion. Okay, they don't even have a choice in some respects. It's just literally ingrained in them. So I think as a society, that should not be pressured for them to get an abortion just because their child has Down syndrome. Okay, if someone's got a rare medical emergency, then I think, yeah, of course, that's going to put the mother life in danger. So yes, they should get an abortion because that mother can then live and she can have another child another time. So I believe that abortion should take place when somebody has a rare medical emergency and the mother's life is in danger. I believe that abortion can take place when it's a young child who has no idea of how to make anything of that situation, and no adult should sit down and try to convince a child to keep that baby and give it up for adoption. I reckon if that child is so young and such an horrific situation, then I think yes, an abortion also seems like the logical thing to do. Okay, so I've used 3 examples there that I believe that in those situations, at least the first 2, abortion should take place. And I think when someone has Down syndrome, their society should not be forcing them to have an abortion just because that child has Down syndrome. Okay, I don't think there's any logical flaws in what I've said.
So you again, getting back to it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, if you want to say something, you can. I just really quickly want to just recap the fact that we just deliberately didn't cut you off. We let you say your whole fucking piece. And what you said was, what if there was a secular society that wanted to bring abortion numbers down? Because you said that we can bring abortion numbers down and you gave some thing. But what if there was this society and people were just having all these abortions? Because you see, the thing about abortions is that there's people have them for all these different reasons. And I think that in these cases, they're good. But if there was, I won't say Finland again, but if there was the Down syndrome thing that I was talking about in Finland, then I think there shouldn't be societal pressure. But at the end of the day, there's this other thing that could account for it. And you just said nothing. You said everything you've said already 3 times this whole call. You started with a question, didn't answer with a didn't finish it with a question, started by opening a question, said a bunch of shit that you've already fucking said, and ended back on the same obfuscation that you landed on before, which is avoiding the fact that you want to deny access to abortion under certain circumstances. What the fuck was the point of that entire fucking monologue, dude? John, what were you saying?
I was going to say the same thing. I was we're coming directly all the way back full circle to you want to force people to have children, like against their will.
No. See, I disagree with that. So I gave some examples of when.
Hold on. Okay, I get that you want to disagree with it. I get that you want to disagree with it. But you did say it. If somebody comes in asking like, "Hey, I need an abortion," and you're gonna be like, "No, you don't get an abortion because I don't like the reason why you need an abortion," then you're literally telling that person, "I'm gonna force you to have a child you do not want. I'm forcing you to have a child." That's what you're telling that person.
Well, okay. So what are okay, so this gets to the crux of the matter. So rather than we're going full circle here, like you said, okay. So we've obviously established some scenarios where we may agree on it. I like to hope that we could agree on it. That there are some scenarios where maybe actually an abortion probably either is the right thing to do, and I believe that's either a young child that's been raped. Yes, I think
we know you think you said it 80 times.
I'm going to meet in the middle here. Okay, I do apologise if I have.
There's no middle. There's no middle for us.
We just try and clear our thoughts and what have you. So I do apologize.
Stephen, are you about to ask us are you about to give us a specific situation or set of situations and ask us whether or not we'd be okay with abortion in those situations?
No, of course I understand. You believe that abortion should be no matter what. Doesn't matter what, anything goes.
Yes.
Right? So
do you disagree? Yeah. Okay. That's perfect. Do you disagree with that position that abortion should be accessible no matter what?
No, I don't agree with that.
Okay. So you don't agree that abortion should be accessible no matter what. So you do believe that there are certain situations in which someone should be denied access to abortion. That should also be a yes, because it's the exact same question, just in different words, just to make sure we're on the same page.
I think that I think there are some scenarios where I think ultimately
So
I do believe that.
if someone wants an abortion, does that mean that they want to be pregnant anymore or not?
Well, they don't want to be pregnant anymore. Clearly, yes.
Right. If someone wants an abortion, does that mean they want to have that child or not?
Of course not.
Okay. So then, just logical syllogism here, right?
Okay.
If someone doesn't want to be pregnant, and you think there are certain situations in which you can deny them access to the thing that stops them from being pregnant, then you want to force people to be pregnant in certain circumstances. That's what we keep saying, and that's what you keep denying and then repeating. If someone wants to be get an abortion to stop having a child, and you say no, then you are forcing that person to have a child they don't want to have. That is the problem that we have with your statement. Do you get it now?
Right. I get it now, finally. I shouldn't have been drinking earlier on.
I agreed. Thank you so much. After an hour and 15 minutes, we finally fucking got there. I don't see a point in continuing because holy shit, it is difficult to get you to answer a simple yes or no question.
I think we made some inroads here, and I don't think, so I'm quite happy to just few more minutes.
I'm sorry. No, we didn't. We didn't make any kind of inroads because we started. No, listen. As far as the abortion topic goes, we started with you want to force people to have babies or to be pregnant, and we ended with you want to force people to be pregnant. We didn't get anywhere. Steven, we didn't get anywhere.
I think the point I was trying to make was,
we got you to agree with your own position after an hour. Those were the inroads we made, Stephen.
Can I just do you want to give me 3 minutes to conclude and you can end the call if that's okay?
No, I don't. Because every time we let you speak, you say the same thing.
Come on, for your cousin across the pond. Come on now.
You're not, no. You're just wasting everybody's time, dude. You said the same thing 80 times.
I'm sure the chat's loving it because most, come on.
The chat wants to hang you.
No, they're lamenting right now.
Yeah.
Yes, we're going to move on to the end of the show. Your position sucks, and you should feel bad about it. And I think we're done with the conversation, man. If you want to call back another time, please do, and we'll talk about something else for an hour, and maybe we'll get you to agree to one fucking thing that you already agreed to in that hour. It'll be a wild ride. Maybe I'll start drinking too. I think that you're amusing yourself and not anybody else. We're going to go. Thank you very much, Stephen.
All the best. You take care, guys.
God damn.
Oh my glob. An hour just to get him to say, yes, I do believe the thing that I've repeatedly said that I believe. Great.
Yeah. The thing you said at first, the thing you claimed that I said, I actually said and agreed with.
Oh
we made progress.
I feel like I've aged. I feel like I'm older now. God.
Well, heathens, that's going to be it for today's clip from the line. Again, if you would like to subscribe to the line, their links are in the description. So please go down there and subscribe. And as a reminder, I do host over there at least twice a month on either a Sunday or a Monday. So if you want to see more of me answering questions from callers, please go over to the line and subscribe. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.